What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Slow Restoration, and if you've ever wanted to hear an LLY Duramax or any diesel for that matter to fire up open intake, you're about ready to, so stay tuned. As you can see in there, now we have fresh motor mounts on both sides, and with the engine mount being finished on that side, now we can go ahead and put that BD diesel full bore exhaust manifold on. Just for a quick comparison, here's our old exhaust manifold, and you can see how it's really necked down right in this area, kind of right above that bolt hole up there. Probably not going to make a huge difference, but since we already have that EGT hole drilled and tapped, it'll make it that much easier to monitor stuff. If you're going to tackle this job, obviously, again, I made it a little bit easier just because I'm doing this all at one time, so the whole front clip is off, but you really don't have to go that far, obviously. It really helps to pull this inner fender out on the driver's side. This steering shaft does need to come apart. Comes apart very easily. Here's the bolt that comes out of it. There's a little metal tab, holds the nut from spinning. Goes right here. Take that out. And you do want to be careful not to spin the steering wheel. So if you want to tie it down, tape it down, bungee it down, whatever, it's just me here working, so I'm not that worried about it. But if you spin the steering wheel with this unhooked, you'll mess up your clock spring. But again, we don't really have to worry about it because it's just me. So it comes apart very, very easily. That slips up. And then this part just kind of hinges up out of the way. And there's a series of nuts and bolts. As you can see, there's a stud hanging down right here, a stud hanging down in the bottom. The rest of them were actually bolts. We are going to reuse the gasket. They do recommend putting a new gasket, but pretty much everyone says just go ahead and reuse the gasket. It's a multi-layer steel shim gasket. And my experience, especially with the LS engines, they seal very well, even for the second or third time. So we're going to give it a shot because I don't have one to put on it, and we'll go ahead and slide this manifold back up on those studs, get the nuts started, and then we'll start the rest of our bolts. We're going to go ahead and follow through with a new transmission mount too to go with those engine mounts. It wasn't completely broken, but it was saturated with oil. As you can see, in between the transmission and transfer case, I wiped most of that off, but you can see by the wetness on the transfer case, it was actually leaking there. I think the trans has been done, actually. And someone just left a bolt loose. One of the nuts on the studs that goes through that holds the transfer case to the adapter was loose. And it appears like it was just leaking there. So I went ahead and snugged that up. We got our new mount on. I just need to line it up, finish tightening everything up, and then we can finalize this exhaust system, because now the engine and transmission with all these new mounts is sitting where it should be. It's not collapsed or anywhere it shouldn't be. So now we can go ahead and line all this exhaust system up. I don't know if I even showed that yet, but I did get it loosely all hung on there. A couple of the hangers in place there. And again, I did a whole video installing this same system on another identical truck to this. So there should be a whole playlist as far as that goes. All right, we got all of that finished, and we have the exhaust completely finished up. The only thing left I do want to do is I always safety tack the joints just to keep them from moving around. There's a lot of vibration, especially riding down the road. So, but it all looks good. It fit really nicely. Have clearance everywhere. Even the trans line sometimes is an issue, but we got good clearance there. And we did... See, I don't know if you can see that there or not, but these downpipes, the tab off of them that bolts to the bracket on the up pipe never quite works out. Usually have to modify it, so we went ahead and modified that and made it work. That's all bolted up, and again we have Our engine mounts done, trans mount done, complete exhaust system done, and we did do that BD full bore exhaust system on that, or manifold on that side. So she's looking good. I think we're about ready to start on the front clip, reassembling that so we can fire this thing up and actually hear it. All right, we've gotten a lot done. Again, I didn't record a lot of it just because I'm really trying to get this thing done so we can use this truck. And some of it, it's got a little risky to record some of it, but we did get the front clip on. As you can see, we went ahead and went with that cat eye front clip that I already had. We'll have to get it all cleaned up. They are blue fenders and the truck is black, so I think for right now I'm actually just going to go ahead and wrap the front fenders. It's dark blue anyway, so at first glance you don't really even notice it. We got it lined up pretty good. What else? We got a lot of stuff done in the engine compartment also. A lot of stuff hooked up. I'm trying to think where I left off. With the front clip on and all that stuff bolted back on makes a big difference. We did get this Mishimoto intercooler all put in there, hooked up. It's actually not hooked up, bolted up. We did not finish, or I did not finish the pusher system yet. I kind of want to fire this thing up. All the piping is brand new. The turbo, I put that billet wheel in, and obviously the intercooler was brand new Mishimoto. It was actually just still sealed in the plastic. It's a really nice piece, a lot heavier than the factory, and it's pretty big too. But with the reason I kind of want to fire it up without all that piping on is because if that turbo has any oil still in it from being stored, I know some oil was dumped in it when it was stored. I think I got it all drained out, and when I put the billet wheel in, I had the compressor housing off, wiped all that off, but I want to fire it up, and anything that's still in there it'll clear itself out pretty much, and that'll keep it from going in my intercooler piping and the intercooler, the brand new intercooler at that. So it's coming along nicely. We got the battery tray cleaned up and painted back in. That battery tray is already in. The battery's actually already in. We're getting extremely close to actually firing this thing. I could probably throw this battery in and fire it right now, but we're going to go over just a few more things, button a couple more things up. All right, I think we're about ready for a first fire. We have both batteries in now and hooked up. One thing you do have to remember is a diesel engine, it runs off oil or diesel fuel, so they can run away. If you've never heard of that, go ahead and Google it. There's plenty of videos that show it. It's pretty scary. You don't want it to happen. So the only way to shut down a runaway diesel is kill the air or starve it for air. Right now, this is our air inlet right into the runners here through the Y bridge. So we're gonna have this plastic plug just in case that we can starve that for air. I don't think it's not gonna suck that down. It's big enough. And I don't plan on this thing running away. We had it running before we did all this, and nothing's hooked up. So usually the reason they'll run away is there's some source of drawing oil from the crankcase, and we really don't have that at all here because the turbo is not hooked up. Crankcase ventilation isn't hooked up at this point, so we're gonna go ahead and give it a shot. I don't expect it to run away, but you always need to be prepared. First fire, see if it works. There it is. She fired up, she's got oil pressure. Sounds good. Got a little bit of a weird sound just because nothing's hooked up. Our turbo is spinning. exhaust is actually very loud. No weirdness yet, so we're going to let this run just for a minute or two, shut it back off, and recheck everything. It does kind of have an interesting noise because you can hear the intake side of it because it's not hooked to the intercooler. I'll put you down there so you can hear it. Kind of neat sounding. Don't normally hear that on a diesel because everything's hooked up and it's muffled through the intercooler and the turbo and all that kind of stuff. Sounds good. Like I said, nothing abnormal. There's no puddles anywhere. We don't have coolant in it yet, so I don't want to let it run too long. Peek inside here, you can see we got a low coolant light. We do have check engine light on. That's because the mass airflow sensor at this point is not hooked up. Give it a couple revs here. She whistles really fast. There's no restriction. We don't want to overspin the turbo either, so I'm not going to rev it to the moon. Sounds really good though. Really good oil pressure. Let's get this thing finished up so we can drive it. That wicker wheel does have some whistle. Let me see if you can get down there and hear it. Alright guys, it is definitely nice to hear some turbo sounds out of this thing, even though we're not hooked up yet. If you remember when we bought this thing, it did have a bad turbo and it was actually completely locked up. And before then, it dumped a whole lot of oil through the entire exhaust system, the entire intake system, and it looked like they had been running it like that for quite a while with the amount of oil that was in there. So definitely nice to hear that turbo spinning the way it should. Now let's go ahead and get this thing hooked up and we can actually start making some boost into the engine.